Ta-da! And welcome to Haydn Behind the Music Stand. I'm your host, Patty Ryan, and with me is Eri Isomura, who is a co-founder of the chamber ensemble 10th Wave Collective in the Twin Cities, a librarian assistant at the Minnesota Orchestra, and a freelance percussionist and piano teacher. And we'll be talking about Japanese manga. Welcome, Eri. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. Before we get down to some other main parts of the podcast, I wanted to give a shout out to my friend Lenny Sophocles, who beautifully did the cover art for my podcast. And I can't believe sushi in cartoon is even cuter.
It's pretty awesome.
Thank you so much, Lenny. That was amazing. So how do we know each other, Eri?
Well, you showed up at my work.
Oh, it's my fault.
It's your fault. So now we're friends.
But that's your fault, though.
Is it?
So yeah, when I first moved to the Twin Cities, I was part of the Artaria String Quartet, but I needed a side hustle. And I had done librarian work in the past at the San Francisco Symphony Youth Orchestra. So I was scrolling through some jobs and I found that the Minnesota Orchestra had an opening for an assistant librarianship. And I was like, well, that's perfect for me. So I was hired and then sat at a desk opposite of Eri. And, I'm new, so I was trying to make a good first impression. And I was really trying to just do my bowings as quickly and as efficiently and perfectly as possible. So I was kind of keeping my head buried in my music. And I kept getting these questions from this girl across the desk from me, just like, hey, so what do you do? And what's your, internally I was thinking, can this girl I just need to work. Like, why is she asking me these questions? But then eventually she broke me down, and then we became very, very close friends. I'd probably say if it weren't for you, I would not be as saturated in the music world here.
Oh, I don't know. You would have made your way.
I don't know. Well, I should say that, you invited me into 10th Wave, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Slowly pulled you in with octopus tentacles. Come, Patty Ryan. So they said, yep, we hired a new person. They'll come next week or something like that. And I got really excited. And generally for the Minnesota Orchestra library atmosphere, it's this quiet and small room with 3 full-timers and then 3 other part-timers. And I've always been there. And bowings have always been a job where you use your eyes and your hands, but you can talk. Your mouth is completely free. So it's kind of, it's always been like that for me. And then so Patty comes in and just as usual, I'm just talking and asking questions because I'm so excited that now I can talk with somebody.
You're like, there's a person.
And I'm super extroverted. So Patty came in and I thought, oh, new friend I haven't met yet. And so I just started talking and then she was very nice.
Oh, good. Okay, at least.
Yeah. I was like, there's no way that she's too focused on bowings that she can't answer anything. So I guess I'll just ask her questions. You kept answering, so you didn't stop me. You weren't like, look, lady.
So I should also clarify, when we're talking about bowings, we're talking about the principal leaders of an orchestra will collaborate and come up with a set bowing that works for the whole symphony, for each piece. So it's our job as assistant librarians to go through every other stand in the orchestra and copy down the bowings into each part with pencil. And the reason why we do that is because things can be changed in a rehearsal. So they have to be done manually. This cannot be done automated. There have been questions about whether or not we could electronically do bowing so that everyone had an iPad or something and people could do that. But we're just not at that level of technology yet in the orchestra. And frankly, then our jobs would be kaput. So,
well, there are always things to do in the library.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely a niche job.
It's pretty chill. I think we have a really good group of people. I really love our family that we've created. And you guys even surprised me on my birthday during COVID, which was amazing. So my birthday was in April and I was washing dishes and suddenly I heard a French horn call. I think it's Siegfried. So I walk over and then it's my entire librarian family, with signs, with balloons and flowers, and they sang me happy birthday. Yeah, it was just really, really touching and sweet, especially during that time when everyone was staying at home. And you guys were distanced, so it wasn't like COVID was spread.
We weren't breaking no rules. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so thank you guys.
Yeah.
So basically, since then, we just were friends, and we have started a kayak team. I don't think we ever have
2.
Up to, well, maybe 3 or maybe 4 now.
Maybe 4,
I mean,
yeah.
or one of cat maybe with sushi.
Oh,
but
yes.
I mean, how could you forget? No, I'm just.
Sushi counts. Sushi counts.
Okay. So yeah, if you're in the Twin Cities and you have a spare $70 and want to order a inflatable kayak, please join us socially distancing on a lake.
It's so fun.
There's a lot of lakes in Minnesota, so there's a lot of places for us to go. Can I start with my funny story about you?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so when I was thinking about a funny story for Eri, I was kind of having a little bit of a problem because oftentimes I found that we just have little funny stories everywhere and that it's kind of hard to pinpoint a specific event because it's just funny all around. And so I came up with the food heist.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
It's a good one.
I invited Eri over to my apartment just to hang out probably. And you brought over trays of free food from the Minnesota Orchestra because they just had a banquet. And apparently one of the other librarians, Eric, mentioned to Eri that there was just a bunch of food. They're going to throw it away. It's sitting in the refrigerator. And I guess he kind of kept egging you on to keep getting more or something, right? Mm-hmm. And so we were talking about it and also the food was just delicious. And we were like, why don't we just go take our Tupperware and get the food?
Yeah,
because it's just sitting, they're just going to and so then we came up with this entire backstory of a reality TV show, Food Heist, where we'll find out if some restaurant is throwing away food and we'll call them up, each other up, and join forces. Food Heist, go over there and save the food. But I kept calling it stealing food. So the tagline now is, it's not stealing, it's saving.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And that first food heist, that was a fail, right?
Yes. And that was the sad part. We went and we got to the refrigerators where they should have been, and we looked in the trash cans and there were all these baby carrots, like the long, thin, fancy, cooked, and they were just lying there in the trash, and it was just sad. And I actually think we haven't done a successful food heist yet.
No.
And probably
there have been multiple calls, but
yes,
we have yet to successfully have a good food heist. But just like any other staff place where food is involved, there are the people that will go after the leftovers a little quicker than the others. And we are those types so that we can have delicious food that no one wants.
Except our bandwidth is pretty slow. So yes. We need to improve that. We need to upgrade.
Anyway, we love leftover food, but don't eat bad food, everyone. Make sure it's still good.
Yeah. PSA.
PSA. Don't get food poisoning because of this episode.
So that's my story.
My story was it Halloween?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Halloween. And hey, wanna chill? Sure. And then so that night I just stopped by and I brought my Nintendo Switch and
then it was game over.
She's like, what's this? Oh, it's a Nintendo Switch. Here, let's play some. She's like, I've never played video games ever in my life. Okay, here you go. So I just plugged it in her computer and we played some Zelda. I don't know. Did we play something else?
Mario Kart.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that was fun. And I went home. And then, 2 days later?
I think it was the next day. But you might have found out 2 days later.
Patty has a Switch. What? Wait! When'd you get one? All of a sudden, Patty has one. Like, oh, okay. Cool. Patty is very responsible. She's not an impulsive buyer, but little does she know what a Switch is going to do to her leisure time.
Oh my God. Although I must thank you because that has helped me through this quarantine incredibly.
It's a good escape. It's a good escape.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny from my perspective. Yeah, I never grew up with video games and I kind of just never thought they were something that I could actually get into later in life. Or it just never crossed my mind. And then when Eri came over and showed me these games, I was like, wow. And so after she left, I thought about it and I was like, well, why can't I get a Switch? I'm not held back anymore. So I was like, okay, I'll just get one. And then, that was the end of my life as I knew it. Yeah.
And it's so great because, by this time last year even, none of you had Switches.
That's true. And that's your fault.
Except me.
As in, that's your fault that we now all have Switches.
I should get commission from Nintendo.
Yeah, you really should. So, yeah, that's the story about how I got into video games.
Yes.
Okay, Eri, are you ready for the Spitfire questions?
Okay.
Okay, Mozart or Beethoven?
Beethoven.
Shostakovich or Prokofiev?
Shostakovich.
Netflix or video games?
Netflix.
Basil or cilantro?
Basil.
Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Symphony or chamber music?
Spitfire? Chamber music.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Favorite practice room?
Ooh, any concert space?
Fair enough. You be fancy like that. Just stroll on the stage of the Minnesota.
I don't do that, guys.
Oh,
Sorry.
hey, I'm here to practice.
Oh, you're in my practice room.
Okay, most inspired musical hero, any genre?
Hiromi Uehara in jazz. Chikuria and Yo-Yo Ma, of course. Horowitz, Argerich, those are piano
Yes.
soloists.
Yeah. Classics. Most transformative performance experience?
Ooh, it's kind of embarrassing, but I still love it. All State Orchestra.
Yeah!
Holla! Holla! Tchaik Symphony No. 5 finale. I played the timpani.
Nice.
It was.
What about it was transformative for you at that point?
It was the moment at Orchestra Hall in Minneapolis when we were performing at the final concert. It was epic. First off, I did not know what I was getting into. I've never played a symphony before. I was a senior in high school and I never did any youth symphonies. So going into it, I didn't realize how overwhelmingly epic and emotional that finale was. And there were so many parts of it where I felt so special to be part of such a huge group. And then I got to play the roles, you know, just the building momentum and all those parts where the timpani is just key in making sure that the moment is just full of excitement and energy. You have to be very careful with the tuning too. I had to tune the timpani to a B. And to me, it was very tricky for me to figure out the difference between a C and a B and making sure that it matches the orchestra.
Right.
That was very nerve-wracking for me too. Timpani, you're by yourself and other people are playing their version of Bs. And what is your B gonna sound like? It's tricky. Timpani are hard, but you know, you get used to it. Anyway, with that adrenaline and the huge hall and that big moment, I felt like that was a very enchanting and transformative moment. Yeah, I do enjoy that kind of big teamwork. You know, it's like a huge ship that is going forth, you know, and everybody has a function. Everybody has a job.
Next piece you want to learn?
Ooh. So it's a piece called Heavenward by Josh Sardania, and it's a piece for marimba and string quartet. And it's going to be on the dance concert.
Eri.
You're on it. I think.
Okay.
It's a chamber piece for that 10th wave is going to play in the dance concert. It's featuring Asian composers and mostly
Which
Asian
are
ensemble.
actually, we were talking about this on a kayak recently. Asian composers are quite underrepresented. So I think the more that we can help promote Asian composers, the awesomer life will be.
There's great music. I'm really intrigued by this piece. I heard it on his website and it was beautiful. I'm going to try to memorize it and, you know, play it well. So
There is no try. There is only do. Yoda!
Pressure! What if I don't?
Well, then Yoda has a problem.
No.
Would you say that marimba is your instrument of choice?
Absolutely.
What is it about that instrument that resonates with you, for the pun?
The marimba is my primary instrument just because it is the best of both worlds in a way, of piano and percussion. And I am a true-bred pianist, and piano is a place where I feel myself, and I can always come back to it. And percussion was basically, I joined in 5th grade. I always thought percussion was the coolest thing in the world, so I did. And then my father is a musician, so he's automatically thinking, oh, well, she has to take drum lessons now. The first lesson, I enter the studio and I see a marimba. It looks like a piano, but it's a marimba. And my mind was completely blown. What?
That's
this
not
exists?
descriptive.
It's like a piano made out of wood, right? You make it.
Yeah. Well, a piano is made out of wood, Eri.
Gosh. Okay, fine. Marimba bars. So it's brown and it has these bars and they're lined up like piano keys, but it's whoever has seen a xylophone. The thing is, I grew up with Orff instruments, so I've never seen a xylophone before that. So Orff instruments are in one key and it's just one line and it doesn't look like a piano, just a straight up bars. So I wasn't very intrigued by that. But when I saw the marimba, I just realized, oh my goodness, I could play that. So in a way, it introduced me to a new life and it changed the way that I approach music and the way that I treat notes. What's good about the marimba is that it's always pretty. It's always pretty. And even if you hit the wrong note, that note itself is still pretty. It's very forgiving.
So you can't go wrong, is
You
what
can't
you're
go
saying.
wrong. You really can't go wrong. Yeah, it's my main instrument because of my piano background and then just how mellow it is.
I think
don't
it's a very versatile percussion instrument. I would almost argue that most percussionists are drawn to the marimba. I think a lot of them find that to be the most melodic instrument.
I think as for the way that a percussionist is trying to be melodic. So when you think percussion, you think drums, you think timpani, you think metal, like cymbals, drum set even. Just like one moment and making that one moment sparkle. It's more about that moment instead of making a complete phrase out of it. Marimba, you can look at literally marimba literature, and you can look at pieces that have originated just from marimba. And marimba has its own history and has its own life as a solo instrument. So with that, I think a lot of percussionists are drawn to the opportunities to play Bach. You can tell a marimba player is good when they're listening to the entire note, the beginning, the middle, the end. And each note, low sounds travel slower and high-pitched sounds travel faster. So being able to understand the timing of your playing, each note by note, to connect the lines and make the notes lifelike.
Yeah, I also teach that as well in string quartet, especially thinking about the note as a beginning, middle, and end, not just the initial strike, even more obvious on marimba.
Because once you play it, it dies. You can't
Goodbye.
extend it. Like, oh hi, bye.
So you already began talking a little bit about how you got into music. Can you continue down, or is there any details along the way that we kind of hopped over?
Well, for music, it was into my family. My dad's side, most of them are musicians. So my dad's mom said, back in 1930s, 40s, that my sons can play music, so then they don't have to be drafted into the army and go to dangerous places.
And this was in Japan.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then they all picked up music, and my dad is the youngest, and he plays the cello. So with that family pursued music as a profession, and my dad, he was in the Minnesota Orchestra for 38 years, and that was just a part of my life. And my mom played piano, and my sister had perfect pitch and pursued music.
Do you have perfect pitch?
No.
Oh.
Thank God.
Oh.
I think it's cursed. I'm just kidding.
But I have perfect pitch.
I know.
So I'm
sorry.
cursed.
No, you're not cursed. It's just, I think it's a big responsibility, and I'm glad I don't have to do it.
Yeah, it is. I would say it is a gift and a curse sometimes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And my brother also played cello. It was all kind of embedded in the family. So since my sister played violin, my brother played cello, and I did not want to be...
I mean, what's left in the string families?
Right?
Viola
Yeah.
and bass. Like, what are you going to...
Right. I had no choice. No, just kidding. And then there was a piano at home, and it's like, oh, well, I'm going to play piano. It was just kind of automatic for me. It's a way that I wanted to make myself unique compared to my siblings.
Mm-hmm. Did you play piano trios together?
Rarely.
Okay.
I think when we turned into teenagers and my sister got a guitar, my brother got a bass, and I got a drum set.
Like an electric bass or an upright bass?
Yep, no,
Okay.
electric bass. And then, we would all play for a worship band or something at
Got it.
church. So I think as for collaborating with my siblings, that's as far as we got. And then for me, I continued to pursue piano. I competed, made it my solo instrument. And with that, because being in band, you could socialize. I also loved percussion. Well, it looked really awesome. I thought all the cool kids are going to get it. So I was nervous about that. So I put a second choice of flute. I'm like, oh, well, I really hope I don't have to play flute. And then sorry, Karen.
Karen's also one of the assistant librarians at the Minnesota Orchestra. It was a flutist.
And then the first day of band came, and there's 7 flutists and 2 percussionists. So I look at, the other guy. Whoa. Oh, that's awesome. I get to play percussion. And I only have to share it with one other person. So I was really excited about that. And knowing how to play piano, and I was playing a lot, and it was very easy. And I loved not having to work hard. So that was an easy way to hang out with my friends.
Not having to work hard?
Give me a break, okay? I was a lazy kid.
Caught that.
Yeah, and it all kind of just came natural to me, so it was easy. And then came the marimba story. And then come middle school, I would play drum set and also start 4-mallet marimba. So on marimba, you can play a lot of music with 2 mallets. You can play a lot with 4 mallets. So there's a huge community of marimba players that play with 4 mallets. I've used 2 mallets per hand since middle school, and to me, it was basically playing piano with 4 fingers, or a larger piano with 4 big sticks. It's very good to understand that the marimba is not just a piano that's made out of wood, but piano's also made out of wood. A lot of words. Yeah, but you approach it like a percussion instrument. But each of those notes are one instrument, and you kind of have to tie them together organically. It's a very different way of moving than when you're playing on a piano. And also for marimba, there are only 4 notes at a time. So then the way that you emphasize each note to fill the space that you're in is also different than how you would approach one note on a piano or 4 notes on a piano. It just doesn't turn into the same musical experience, but they're just very different. And then since, as I said, my dad's a cellist, I grew up listening to Bach, a lot of Bach. I would go to sleep and he's playing Bach. Back. Yeah. So those cello suites by Bach are ingrained in my head. And when I was in high school, I would start playing those on marimba because I can. And it's just silly to play those on a piano. Piano has their own Bach. So I think it's very special for cello to have one, and they have been played by many instruments, the Bach cello suites. Right?
Yes.
But anyway, in college, marimba started to grow on me. And after my sophomore year, I decided to become a performance major. Piano was more of an emphasis for my life when I started college. But by the end, percussion was much more. So it really flipped me around. I love collaborating. My love for collaborating continues in my marimba playing too. And I just want to hang out with people musically and just like, okay, we'll play this piece. How about this piece? We'll jam. And that's also why I love playing drum set for jazz combos and stuff too. So finding more ways to hang out with my friends.
So basically music equals friendships.
Yay.
Well, yeah.
It does. to me it does.
Yeah, to Eri specifically.
Yes, it's a career. Yes, it's a job. But I love building relationships.
But above all, it ends up being...
Above all.
Yeah, the community that we build in music is kind of special. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about 10th Wave?
Sure. What should I say? Okay, it's spelled 1028. Anyway, it's a passion project. It's a brainchild of me and 3 other friends, and we said, well, let's start a new music group. And we didn't have a name for a while.
A new music group, meaning not another music group, but you mean contemporary, underrepresented composers and time period.
Yeah, just music that's in the last century. I think we all grew up, all of us in the group, and the classical music is very old, and it's a niche. It's a niche for sure. There are always going to be classical music fans and audiences because it's timeless in so many ways. But then at the same time, there are a lot of pieces that are representing this time now, and composers that are living through 2020, existing at the same moment as us, and creating. I think there's a lot of meaning and significance in that. So if we can somehow represent those and bring those out, I think it's better. And so many times you hear of composers that are famous after they're dead, and then all you have are collections of what they left behind. I feel like if musicians can support composers and see to it that they keep creating and they keep expressing themselves in a way that remains for generations to come, I think musicians have a big job to do.
Yeah.
And so 10th Wave is a mixed collective, so we don't have a set group like a string quartet. It is based on what we want to play. So it's anywhere from solo to up to maybe 9 or 10 people even. So it's a small group of people, and it's usually a mix of classical instruments. So violin, clarinet, piano, cello, horn, whatever. And then the composer will have a piece that they want to create. Or we find a piece that's written for a very mixed up junk drawer ensemble. That's what I like to call it sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fun.
I want to make sure that you don't forget our narrator.
Oh, yeah. Owen.
Yeah.
So one of our core members is Owen, and he's a professional singer.
But I think what he does really well with 10th Wave is, so at the beginning of some of the first concerts with 10th Wave, you had him read poetry before the piece that was connected with the theme of the entire concert. It was connected to the theme of each piece. And his role in 10th Wave is being that thread that connects everything together. So he ends up being kind of the glue, in my impression, as opposed to a string quartet, as opposed to an orchestra concert, as opposed to any other kind of chamber music collective that you might see. I think Elwin has a really unique role. That's really cool about 10th Wave.
He is a big part. There's a huge part that actually one of us, Whaley Grenache, she's a clarinetist in 10th Wave, and she wanted to make sure that it was an experience that is not normal and not just no one talks, people just play, people clap, and it's over.
Yeah.
There was a big emphasis on making sure that people felt like it was a personal experience and it was inviting, and classical music is something you can participate in. You can experience it with the players, and I think that narrating and just communicating is very effective in that.
Mm-hmm. And 10th Wave has pushed my limits of cello proficiency and playing to a whole new level that I did not expect. I mean, I've done a lot of contemporary music and I really do love playing contemporary music, but there's this one piece where I have to simultaneously play cello and a bass drum and use a pedal with my left foot. So I'm playing the bass drum with my right foot, and I have to cue in a looper. I have to use that with my left foot. This piece is called 22 by...
21.
Oh, whoops. I'm thinking Taylor Swift. 21 by Andy Akiho, and then you play marimba.
I play marimba
on that piece. So it's a cellist, marimba, but the cellist also plays bass drum and has a looper pedal that I pre-record myself. So it's a layered sort of effect. It's a really cool piece. And I mean, I was squirming because it's like already playing cello is like rubbing your stomach and tapping your head at the same time. But this was like as if I had two other arms that I had to do scratch my leg. And I don't know, it was just like a whole learning curve for me. But I hope people liked it because I put a lot of effort in that. And it
awesome.
Still even wasn't perfect. Because every time I'd be like, Eri, was that right? Was that right? You're like, no. No, try again.
Try again. You can do it. Yes. The piece was written by Percussionist, and
I mean, cellists can do this. But the cellist that it was written for is very versatile.
Yeah. So the piece is very demanding rhythmically, and it's not just playing 6 notes in a row. It's about playing 6 notes in a row, and then 2 longer notes at the same time, or thinking about one beat and then splitting it into 6, and then also splitting it into 4, and then playing some of those notes.
Right. I mean, it's not a straightforward rhythm, as you're saying. We're doing cross rhythms.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my own cross rhythm internally, but then that has to match up with Eri's personal cross rhythm. So it's
sometimes I'm playing tambourine with my foot too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's just like these spheres of rhythms that are all coalescing, but we have to be so strong in our own independent little spheres that we're doing.
And they phase too. So sometimes it's not all divisible by 1.
Right.
So you can't just go back to the downbeat. It actually, the one pattern starts again after 6 beats. Another pattern starts again after 4 beats, and etc.
Great.
So great.
Thanks.
Thanks. Well, no, I'm glad because you were up for the challenge and you were able to get it in your head and get it in your arms and legs and get the piece as fast as possible. And I think it was good.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a recording of the concert.
Oh, that's too bad. Or maybe it's good. I don't know.
No,
maybe it's a good thing.
I'm sure there is. It's somewhere. But I mean,
you can see the pure fear and focus at the same time.
It was one of my must play
pieces.
And it's so great because
you're welcome. No.
You're welcome. There's so many pieces I want to play, but they require a lot of friends. So one other cool thing about 10th Wave is that we're very flexible at this point about making sure that we are doing what we want to do. And this is in terms of who we represent and what kind of future we want for the community. I went into it slowly by writing a grant for another group and finding that it just takes a lot of good writing and just being straight to the point of how are you going to change this community. And with that grant writing process, I've been able to see more of how 10th Wave is actually making an impact in our community.
Yeah.
And when you think about what kind of people show up at a new music concert.
This is like a sub-niche.
Yeah. So if you're going to look for people that want to hear you, you have to think about what kind of connections you can make outside of that too. So you can expand your reach and see what kind of composers want to connect with who.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of composers represent a community that is not represented in classical music. And if if we can bring those up and bring more people to concert halls and music events where they feel like they're seen. And somebody from my ethnicity wrote that, or somebody from my country wrote that. I think it's really meaningful, especially when in America, Asian Americans are minority, even though Asians are a majority in the world. Just because they're Asian doesn't mean their music sounds Asian. And in fact, if you expect that, that's very
short-sighted. That's the thing. Like, I think, when we are talking about Asian American composers being underrepresented, I think oftentimes we get put in this camp of quote unquote world music. And that's like, what is that? What
like
is
ethnic music? Like what?
Yeah, what is this nonsense?
I think it's about the hierarchy, how the intrinsic value in genres, or how much money is a ticket, right, for a certain musical experience. And when people think that, oh, well, it doesn't have this classical training, that doesn't mean that it's less valuable. It's just as valuable to maintain what the cultural identity that you have in music. And it's a very beautiful thing that it can be represented through music. For me, I grew up in Minnesota. My music is pop music or classical music, jazz music, but what makes it Asian American? Well, is it? So there are questions of assimilation, or is my identity gone musically? Or can I still perform it because it's part of who I am? And so just because it sounds like something doesn't mean that your identity has to represent it, but it can. And I think those options to show that, yes, non-white people do perform, non-white people do compose, and non-white people also lead groups. And I think that for me, I've seen plenty of Asian people on the classical music stage, especially in orchestras, but then we don't have them in leadership, in arts leadership. So 10th Wave is a very special experience because from the top, it is mostly Asian American. And then we can really value representation as part of our programming and as part of our mission. So we have a mixed group of artists in our membership. We just want to grow the music community in a way that the Twin Cities hasn't seen before, in a classical way. As long as we think that curiosity is just as valuable as familiarity, hopefully more people will branch out and be able to feel at home with other people that don't look like them play their music, whether it sounds like yours or not.
I really like that. Curiosity is equal to familiarity. So on that note, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. So before the break, Eri, we were talking a little bit about our connection in music and 10th Wave and all the missions that we try to do with that organization together. But let's move on to talk about an outside interest of yours, which you sort of surprised me that it was Japanese manga. I had no idea that you had this interest up until like an hour ago. You never spoke, or I don't remember at least. So, like, how did you get into this interest?
Wow. Oh, it goes way back. Well, I am Japanese American and I grew up in Minnesota. My family, we all spoke Japanese in the home, and I learned English through school and, ESL and stuff. I speak less and less Japanese, and I speak way more technical and, everything in English. I can do that. So then when it comes to reading and writing and speaking Japanese, manga was one of the major ways that contributed to how I can speak Japanese fluently and read it and somewhat write it. So while we were all growing up, we went to Japan every summer because that's what my dad promised his father-in-law. He would bring the family back so that they can see my mom and
you.
And the kids. Yeah. So we dove into the Japanese culture, and especially my sister, she left for Japan right after college and she hasn't come back. She has always been interested in Japanese culture and Japan. So she kind of led the way for my brother and I to just really dive into the pop culture, and that's lots of CDs, lots of toys, and lots of comic books. And comics and magazines were one of the primary ways where I would learn things, and then my mom would say, "Where'd you learn that?"
Uh-oh.
And then I would say, "Oh, yeah, the manga."
Would that be something like, did she confiscate?
No, it's never that bad.
Okay.
Yeah, but they would just kind of be crude humor or some kind of raw statement where she's like, "I'd never said that before, and what is this company?" So there's this like outside source, right?
Yeah.
because we had Japanese at home and we have Japanese at church. We didn't go to Japanese school. We went maybe for 1 year, but mostly our literacy came from Japanese comic books. So, and
I'm sorry, I have never opened a manga book before. Is it written in characters or is it something that I could finesse? Okay, so I couldn't actually read manga unless I was fluent in Japanese characters.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, growing up, we would see Sailor Moon sometimes on TV.
Is that a manga?
Yeah,
originally?
That's a manga. Yeah.
Okay.
And like Dragon Ball, right? So we grew up buying the comics and then sometimes seeing them on TV. But we know that originally it was a comic first. It was a manga first. So in 4th grade and on or so, I started reading more comics like Dr. Slump or Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball. And that's more a publication for boys and just like lots of action and sports. Violence, all the things. So before that, I read a lot of girly comic books that are for
like Sailor Moon, right?
Yeah, like Sailor Moon. But Sailor Moon could be scary. But yeah, so there are different manga publications that have kind of a certain style. They have a monthly comic magazine like Jump, Shonen Jump, or Shoujo, Ribbon Comics, and Ribbon Comics. And with those, then you can have a monthly episode of whichever story. So we collect those, and if we really like the stories that are in those, then we'd buy the manga book itself of just that title.
I see.
Yeah. So we collect comic books, and we would have boxes of them. Yeah, that's where I learned a lot of slang, or as much as comics can give, at least.
So like kind of the basis of your humor, of your overall humor, is maybe from reading those comic books, right? Yeah.
Yes, a lot of it, yes.
Are they expensive?
No. I mean, if you buy a lot, of course. So, like, if you buy the ones that come out monthly, or even if they are weekly, a book of, say, one book was about $4.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
I mean, for like a kid,
magazine,
though.
The monthly magazine was a little bit more than that, like maybe $7. But I don't know.
But I guess my question is, I mean, because $4 for a kid is actually kind of a lot. I remember $20 when my parents once gave me $20 for, I think, security or something. I was kind of like, I'm rich. I was like, oh my God, I have $20. Yeah, so
$20 is a big deal.
What am I going to do? So,
yeah.
I was like, I have to put this in a bank account.
Wow! I didn't even think about banks until college.
Well, I mean, I think my kid version of bank account was like, I have to protect this. I have to save this.
Yes. Oh, very good. Oh, you're such a good kid.
No, then I go and spend. I buy a Nintendo Switch.
Oh, you know where your priorities are. No. So I think for me personally, or for our family, it wasn't a big deal because we were obsessed with them, but we didn't worry about needing to accumulate them. So we had them, and then we'd wait until either one of our parents go to Japan for a bit, and then I say, oh, can you get these 2 comic books for me? And then they come back with it.
Got it.
So it wasn't part of my allowance. They just brought it back.
They were presents then.
Yeah. And then when we go to Japan, our grandparents would give us allowance, right? Like tons.
Yeah, because they haven't seen you.
Yes, yeah. So they want to give us money so that we would enjoy ourselves there. So that means that we can't really save it.
Right. Because you wouldn't bring it back to convert because you would lose money.
Sure.
And you probably didn't think at that level either. So
no, like even if we did, we still spent a lot on toys and comics and things. And just so that they can see that we're enjoying Japan, and just being kids. It was at the price of not being able to see our grandparents.
I was going to say, though, I mean, that's the,
Yeah. And, we miss them through the year, and then we only see them for 2 weeks a year. It's not very much. And we're the only immediate family in Minnesota, too. So, I mean, we have plenty of friends, so it's fine. But
it's different.
Shaped our character, The comics kept going. And I grew up watching more action anime like Naruto or Bleach, and those are more Jump. Jump is a publication for more boys and more sports. The genre is very active. So getting into that showed me more about manga being investment for me and seeing the momentum that the writers are thinking about when they draw. And not just like, we need to make this deadline, so this part's really messy or something like that. It's more like the timing of when you see a big picture and when your eye goes to what part of the page, how long it takes to read that part, and then go to the next page and then what you find there. And it's the graphic novel experience of feeling the space space and the time that the writer intends. It's really neat. And honestly, I don't own any English subtitled manga, and actually have a hard time reading English mangas like Marvel or like DC Comics or something.
Oh, I see. Right. Sorry. I want to
Like-
clarify. So manga in Japanese means cartoon, right?
Yeah, comics.
Comics. Okay.
Like
so when
pictures.
you say American manga, you just mean American comics.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I was like, wait,
Yeah.
are there Japanese comics in
Oh yeah,
America
I guess
that are...
manga implies Japanese comics, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, action comics. I guess to me they're interchangeable.
Right.
Uh-huh,
But
yeah.
but wait, so going back to what you were saying before I got confused, you were saying that it's hard for you to read American comics like Marvel, DC because of the what was the reason again?
Oh, I didn't say.
Oh.
Yeah, so those are more difficult just because the letters, or I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the font that is used in English, but it just somehow doesn't show me how they're feeling. And I think English graphic novels that I've tried to read, the font feels very harsh and lots of words, and maybe I'm just finding the ones that are a lot more, some like sci-fi story where there's a big description about which planet or what's happening in the dystopian world or something like that. I'm not sure. But there isn't very much expression on the faces, maybe, as much as I see in manga. And also, I think growing up personally, I've just associated manga or graphic novels with Japanese letters. Japanese, it being in Japanese. So then it's hard for me to relate, I guess, when it's a character on a black and white page and they're saying something, but it feels expressionless to me.
I see.
Because it's not in the way that I've been raised or in the way that I've grown up reading manga.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have any particular shout-out favorites that you wanna include?
Sure. So I love Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball. I read it several times through the same artist. Also wrote Dr. Slump before Dragon Ball, actually, and that one is one of my sources of humor as well. It's a comedy, and then all the sports ones. So these are all the Jump ones, I guess. So Slam Dunk is one of the main reasons how basketball became popular in Asia.
Oh, okay. Really?
Slam Dunk.
Oh.
And other sports ones are a little more recent, like Prince of Tennis or Ice Shield 21, and Ice Shield 21 is a football comic. And my brother would teach me the rules of football maybe 3 or 4 times growing up, but never understood it until I read this comic.
Oh my God.
And recently I've been starting to read, translated into English, it's called Regarding Reincarnated to Slime. So it's like this dude gets killed.
That's a wordy title.
Yeah, because it's actually a really technical comic. It's very wordy. And
Do you read it left to right? Oh, no, right to left, right?
right to left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to check.
I guess just to make sure people know that in Asia, books are read from right to left rather than in the Western cultures, it's read from left to right.
Yeah, so this one is hilarious, but it's really epic. Yeah, there are a lot of Japanese things about it. So it's really...
Such as?
Just the tendencies and the cultural nuances in... Oh, like, why would you say that? Or what just happened? Or just the side comments are very Japanese.
I see.
So, yeah, so it's like a good mix of sci-fi and because this Tokyo guy gets killed and he turns into...
I'm spoilers, and I'm just kidding.
Oh, that's just the beginning. It's fine.
Oh, okay. But I'm also kidding because I can't read Japanese, so...
No, I'm sure it's translated. You can find it anywhere.
Oh.
Yeah, so this guy gets reincarnated into a slime, which is basically like a drop of gel.
Why?
And he can't do anything, right? He has no eyes.
Well, yeah, he's a blob.
Yeah, he's literally a blob. And then he's given this system or some kind of knowledge base, and it gives him the ability to do certain things, one thing at a time.
So
And slowly he develops the way to being able to see, being able to move, being able to communicate, and all these things. So it's just like starting from scratch. What ability would help you get from point A to point B?
It's a portrayal of evolution? Question mark?
Maybe. Yeah, could be. I haven't really thought about it. I only have 4 books. But yes.
I was going to ask about themes. If there's unifying themes generally in manga, or if they all are just kind of different. Like, there's some genres of art or music or comics or whatever that they kind of have this overall arching Like poetry too has this overall arching theme.
Depends on the comic. Lots of long-standing comics would go through lots of concepts, and they would talk a lot about human relationships, just human connection. And it's not just art and then people fighting or something like that. There's always something behind it. And lots of good comics go through different situations of people being stuck in a problem, or someone else is stuck in a problem and they need to figure out how they can help each other. And I feel like for manga, it's just like having a whole nother medium, and you can do whatever you want with it. You know, as I was saying, I was more into the sports ones or the action ones, and then they can address anything. So I have this one that's called Nodame Cantabile, and it's a girl that's a pianist. Main characters are her and this other pianist, and he wants to become a conductor. And then so as the story goes on, there's personal experiences and stories of all these characters that are part of an orchestra, or like a rival or other love interest. I mean, everything goes around.
Accurate.
How accurate? Some of it's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also become a live action drama too. This one is a famous one called Dororo by Osamu Tezuka. And Tezuka is an older writer, and the style is more old-fashioned.
What do you mean old-fashioned?
So the drawings themselves, you can tell he has a very specific style.
Can you describe it a little bit?
I guess there's a different use of the art in terms of backgrounds and shading, drawing, all the strokes, and the way that the characters are portrayed and the expression that they have. So if you think about the difference between a realistic drawing versus a comical drawing, think like Mickey Mouse, right? Just like how many lines does it take to draw? But where those lines are crucial to make them exactly the type of bubbly comic that it is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that, where I feel like less lines show the character. But as for plot, Dororo is more a historical fantasy, and because they're different old Japanese fable monsters, ogres, those things that come out and they attack, or they cause problems in the villages, and
I see,
like spirits and demons and that kind of thing. And then if you look at, say, like Slam Dunk, right?
So I see. So it's like, it's much more shaded.
Different. Yeah, the graphics are very different, and they're just different treatments of the page and the squares that they use, how the page is structured, the space is structured.
Yeah, I think that's really cool to consider. I didn't grow up with comics, so I don't really have an initial appreciation for it. But when you're talking about it, I think that's kind of the cool thing structurally about a composition of a comic book, is how to tell the story to your audience in just the right suspense way. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. When you draw, say, like a room, where do you draw it from?
What
and
perspective?
How does and then what do you want the focus to be on? And you assume you know that the character is looking at somebody else talking, and you are a third person. So then when a writer suddenly says, "Oh, I'm talking to you, the reader," I'm like, "What?"
Broke the fourth wall. I was there.
Yeah. It's always very surprising. It comes once in a while. Where somehow you're involved in it.
Yeah.
But usually not. And so you just get to watch and be part of the action. Back to your question about what they write about. It's just like books. You can write about anything. And you can write stories about anything, but they're generally narratives, whether it's nonfiction or fiction. I mean, there's the whole gamut. So there are comics about cooking, about being in school. There are also plenty of comics that are just 4 boxes at a time. Oh. Right? Just like newspaper comics. There's only like a comic few strip. Squares. Yep. Yep. So they have a style like that where it's 4 boxes, just straight down, and that's the style. And each one is like a little joke or just a little moment.
In that style, is the narrative across each page, or is it just a comic? I guess
Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are all connected.
Okay, yeah, because I guess I should say that I did grow up with some comics. I grew up with books of Charles Schulz Peanuts. So I would read Peanuts. And so maybe it's more like that you're mentioning. Because some of the comics would bleed over and the narrative would go to the next week. like the next week publication of that.
Yeah, and then when you buy the whole book, then you can see the connection all
The
straight
storyline.
Kind of like binge watching Netflix. You just see the whole thing. Sometimes it's just that one, and sometimes it's the whole page, but they're all the same characters. So those are different short stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool about having a book instead of just the weekly or monthly magazine is that sometimes there's these extras in the back of like a shorter story that they wrote a long time ago. So it's like a completely different story.
It's like
but
bonus
it's the same
material.
writer. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes it's like a special feature Christmas episode or something like that, right? Where it's completely outside of the plot, but it's hilarious and people love it, right? The one that I grew up with and I still love reading over and over again is Chibi Maruko-chan. And
it's colorful.
Oh, no.
Is it
That's
colorful
just the cover.
inside?
No,
okay.
no, it's
So
not like
that's something I wanted to clarify too. Just sorry to interrupt, but so most of these mangas are black and white. Are there?
They are all black and white.
Okay, so there's no colorful ones.
No color. Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes if it's like a special moment, then the publication asks the writer for a color version of the next episode, or like the color version of the first 3 pages. And then the rest of it's black and white.
I'm sorry, I'm squirming because I have a couple questions.
Okay.
But is it black and white because manga gets published in newspapers? Okay, that makes sense.
The comic books, the ones that came out weekly or monthly, they are all published on basically newspaper material. So it is black and white when you see it published in the magazine. And then they're black and white when you buy it in a book of all consecutive episodes or stories of it. So then rarely would you find a color version of something because they don't color it. It's just not color. It's all black and white. So,
But you're going to explain to me that book. I interrupted.
Oh, Maruko-chan. Yeah. Okay. So one of the genres that I don't really like slice of life genres, which means they're just ordinary and nothing fantastical or magical or unreal happens in it. It's just day to day. Like for Chibi Maruko-chan, the character is just a 3rd grader and like her family and her classmates, and it's just day to day humor of what happens and the emotions that go through a 3rd grader's head.
There's not much of a storyline in that sense. It's just kind of the day.
Oh, there's day to day. It's not linear.
Right.
So each episode is its own, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's the writer's experience as a child and growing up in that town.
So it's autobiographical.
Somewhat, yes. And actually, it's the same town that my dad's mom came from.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Nice. So you're saying that you don't like slice of life, but
except for this one.
I was going to say, except that must be an exception, yeah.
But when you have the option of having dragons or magic powers or all these epic things, why would you just do normal? Why would you draw a thing? Like, what a waste, kind of. So that's a really strong opinion. I mean, I've read so many love story ones where there's absolutely no magic, whatever with it. But
you're like, this is trash. Why did I?
But,
give me my dragons.
I'm not trying to offend all the ones that I totally respect. Actually, I respect all of them. But
No,
I just
it's
prefer
called
to
a preference.
Yes, I prefer to read ones where it's just like, wow, you have ink, you have black and white, and this is where you can come up with, and it's pretty incredible. Yeah. Growing up, I saw that it's a big part of my life. It's a big part of how I identify myself.
And how come I didn't know this before?
I don't know. I guess I never talked about it.
No.
Yeah. No.
You learn something new about your friend every day.
Yay.
Well, maybe not every day, but on this podcast, you do.
Oh, yeah? Did you? Have you?
Well, I mean, that's part of the point, I suppose, is
good.
getting to know my friends outside of just music.
Yay. Yeah. But yeah, so my boyfriend, Richardson, he is very into anime, which is not manga. Anime is the motion cartoon, right? Animated.
Got
animation. It. Yep. So that's a whole nother genre.
So when Dragon Ball Z is that now called anime?
Well, if it's cartoon, on TV, then it's anime.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure.
Then it's manga.
Okay, print, manga, cartoon, animated, anime.
Anyway, yeah, with Dragon Ball, they split it. So Dragon Ball, the comic, is the whole story that, not the whole story that involves the writer, but he writes a story. It's like comics 1 through 42. And when the anime Dragon Ball came out, it's only covers to a certain point in that series. Dragon Ball Z starts the second part of it, but it's still in the manga, but the anime is organized differently.
Okay.
And the anime actually keeps going and does more intergalactic stuff. So the same characters exist, but, they're growing up and they're doing different things and fighting different enemies. Yeah, as for different perceptions, I've realized certain things about Japanese culture too that is not really American too, and there are generalizations that I'm also finding retrospectively that that is not good.
At least insensitive.
Yeah. Japanese culture a lot of it is about conforming to the collective whole, and the established manga industry there's a lot of socially restricting roles especially for genders. Sports are for boys, love interests, romantic ones are for girls. So growing up, I wondered, but I barely saw any sports related girl comics. It just wasn't a thing.
So you're saying that you never saw a sports manga that had a heroine in it?
A sports manga that was published by a comic publication generally directed toward girls.
Okay.
If there were action, then it's more like superhero and magical powers and sparkly stars and stuff, but it wasn't ever really a sport. So in that, I'm seeing my own faults of how I would characterize people or interpret what other people say based on my own upbringing of reading these comics. And, you must be this because you are this. It's like, nope, that's not true. And then, for instance, like a recent one would be the concept of androgynous characters or sexually neutral. So then when I see a boy character that's very feminine, then it doesn't make sense to me. But there's more of that than in American culture, I think.
I see.
Than in the media in America. And so, say, like, the first time I saw a homosexual relationship, right? Like a gay couple in any story was in a Japanese comic.
Oh.
Right. Or, it's just like, that could be that too, So then, in a way, even though it's very restricting, there's sometimes these surprises like that where it's like, like they can do that, and it's not, they have that in there. So certainly has helped me see how writers are trying to do in representation, and I think it's good. But it's a long time coming because you can't push the boundaries for a lot of socially normal things in Japan. It's really interesting to see all this in media, and I know that I am an American reading these Japanese comics, so I am a foreigner in Japan.
Right.
And even if I read all these things, doesn't make me Japanese. But I feel like it has somewhat contributed to my knowledge of how people act, like why people act the way they do. But it's certainly not the full picture because I've never lived in Japan for like more than 5 weeks at a time.
Right.
So how am I supposed to know, right? And everybody around me knows that I'm American, so it's not like they're going to, and they're going to work around that too, right?
Right. They're not going to treat you as if you were like them.
Japanese. So I think manga for me, it's from an outside perspective, but it's still a part of me because it's been so ingrained in my background.
Yeah.
Third culture kid, what they call that. Because I'm Japanese here.
Right. I think that sometimes Asian American kids have that exact identity crisis you were just mentioning. And I probably couldn't say it much better, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But
I think one thing that I was thinking about when I was flipping through these comics that I have right here is the treatment of space. I've heard before that artists decorate space and music decorates time. And for comics, it is all about space. It is all about how much space is going to be time. And it's the other way around for music. So when I flip through these, and some of them, you can read through all of it in 20 minutes. Some of it you can read through in an hour. And it's based on how dense it is, and how much it is, but it's also how much you want to absorb in that moment. And I think that fluctuates based on how much you want to stay there. In that moment. And with music, it's true too. That one moment that felt like ages was only one measure, but the impact of it made it feel like a long time. and you remember it. You remember it differently. And so I think it's the same with that. It also says something about how we treat words, because some comics, you don't need words because the artist is so good at showing the expression on their faces. And you know exactly what they're thinking and how long it's taking for them to process that thought or that moment. And then something happens to show that action. You don't need words. You just have to draw them. So say one of the last stories in Slam Dunk, there's a story that has 5 words in it because you don't need them.
Interesting.
Because it's like the last few seconds before the buzzer. And it's just all suspense. And the ball goes this way. He's looking at him. The ball is passed over. And all these people are watching. You don't need words to describe how you're feeling. It's just all there.
But that's a good example of what you're describing, in that you could just flip through that page because there's minimal text on there. And you could just say, okay, I get the idea. Okay, it's suspenseful. Okay, the buzzer is about to. But you also could spend a while just looking and being present with that character and whatever emotion that is going. And that could take, you can extend that emotion as an audience member.
Yeah.
That's cool.
With that, I can relate that with music too. You don't need words to describe the moment a lot.
I'm now inspired.
Maybe that's the next purchase.
Oh no, I know. Tomorrow I'll be like, Eri, I used up all my savings. So I'll leave you with one final question. After all the impact that COVID has done to classical music, what do you think is something positive that's going to come out and enhance our profession?
I mean, COVID is at the same time unfortunate that it's taken so many lives and it has changed our world. But one thing that always sticks to my mind right now is the way that people are asking classical ensembles to stand up for people and clarify what they believe in and clarify what kind of things they're going to do as an organization to represent people. There's a push for organizations to make a statement online or put something on their website that says that we stand for this. And to push organizations to do that, to show that yes, music is very important in culture, to express what the people want. And COVID has helped people think harder about what they actually want to show. And the way that people have responded in, oh, what can I do to help? And it's not in like a, oh, let me help you out of your oppression type. It's like, what can we do to make this world a better and more equal place? I see more and more classical musicians stepping up to take leadership in that aspect. And I think that because of COVID and because people have more time to really dwell and think about it and put it into action steps of how they can be a presence in leadership, in arts leadership, and show more inclusion, more opportunities for anybody to be able to represent themselves in classical music.
That's an awesome answer. Do you have anything that you want to plug?
You can hit up my website, eriisomura.com, and see more news of stuff that I've been up to for projects. And also have a Facebook page, and for 10th Wave, there are a lot of platforms that you can access. I would also plug in GITSY's, Greater Twin Cities Youth Symphonies. I've been a music administrator there, and it's been awesome. They're a wonderful organization and trying to make sure that there's more music education available for everyone in the community.
Nice. And if you would like to support this podcast, please share it with your friends and family. It's free. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and Stitcher. You can also visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/Haydn Music Stand. You can access more content and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Haydn Music Stand. You can also leave a review on Apple Podcasts, preferably a positive one, or give feedback at haydnmusicstand@gmail.com. Thanks, Eri, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yay!
Yay.
Say bye, Sushi.
I'm scared.
Don't be scared.
Ah.